Hello, everyone. We are back for our Friday Leadership Lunch Chat with Jennifer Wilson and myself. So this week, we've been hearing a lot about people putting plans in place to get back into the workplace. And I think everyone's got different ways of going about it, different thought process of how to go about it, and also concerns around controls, security with people at home, as far as internet access and following policies and procedures that you can't control when you're in the office. So lots on the plate for concerns, and we're going to talk about that today. Jen, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think that we should just talk a little bit about broadly, because that's like the today thing, but maybe we should also talk a little bit about, how do you drive change in an organization and remain flexible and nimble and responsive, and how do you get people who, a lot of change has been thrust upon them this year, maybe, and they aren't that change loving. How do you get them to come along?
That sounds like a song.
It might be. I'll have to work on that.
Feeling of change.
Yeah. I bet it is a song. Or
Yeah, well,
most people like change thrust upon them, but that's how it is, so.
Yeah. And so I think what's important is first kind of talking about agility with putting plans in place. And that always isn't a natural state of being, to be agile as far as when you strategically plan anything, because, typically we have a better known out there of what we think is going to happen based on the past and so forth. And this is really probably one of the hardest planning processes to do because you really don't have any knowns except for the fact of, what you know today. And I think, some of the best practices I've been hearing is really over communicating, number one, and having plans in place that are agile, but also communicating what those changes would be based on the alert level in your area and so forth, so that people understand that, you're working toward getting people into the office. But if plan B happens, this is what it would look like. If plan C happens, this is what it would look like based on feedback that you're getting along the way, because it's really important to incorporate that. And also giving people options that are not comfortable coming back. And so this can be costly and expensive to do, but I think it's important in just getting people's stress levels to the right level.
Yeah. Well, I think on this whole come back to work, or come back to the office, because we've been working the whole time, return to the office, opening plans, which are at various levels for many firms. Some, reopened July 6th, some were open in June. Some stayed open, they took, their essential status very seriously and stayed open the whole time. So there's a wide range. But those that are asking people to come back to the office have to have contingency plans. I think everybody does right now. We have no idea what this virus is going to do. It's continuing now to spike up. I think at least the last time I looked, death rates were not spiking at the same levels yet. So hopefully what that means is more people are getting exposed, but it's a less violent version of this thing or something. I don't know. But anyway, bottom line is we don't know what's going to happen. And also there's a conversation right now afoot saying, hey, because everybody's inside with the severe heat in the South, that's why they're spiking. And that, that is not bode well for us to all get inside when it turns cold up north. So we have to have these plans for what happens this fall or winter as things shift. Is this going to turn out to be like we have COVID season or something, like we have flu season? And if so, at what levels do you all go back and work from home And you're right, contingencies are required, which requires conversation, leadership table time, or, and I use the word table euphemistically because we can do that by a remote video. This is a table you and I are sitting at together. But anyway, that requires leadership time to sit around and talk about contingencies. And most of the time, what we want to do is just roll out a policy and then move on. We don't want to talk about what if, so.
Right. Yeah. And I think, the whole topic of policy is still important because there's control procedures that still have to be in place in any plan that you have, especially when there are people at home versus people in the office, and how you work to make sure that the systems are still secure, the client information is still secure. What happens when other people in the house that people are in are on social media and other types of applications? Is there any risk there? And also making sure as files are transferring and information is transferring into homes, how you keep that secure as well. And so if you don't have somebody that is a specialist in that, or works in your organization or practice, this is the time to make an investment in a consultant that specializes in this full time, because there is a whole thought process around making sure that you don't put yourself at risk with all these other things that you have to consider as far as just workflow.
Right. Well, and we've been doing a lot of work in the last, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks maybe, as firms have come out of emergency mode and they've come into more like, what's our next better, our new future going to look like? We've been doing a lot of work on flex workplace policies or blended workforce policies, where we're helping firms update those kinds of things. Now, we're not being the IT people to create that piece, but we're working hand in glove with the IT people to make sure that the flex policy reflects some of those things. And I was reading some edits of one of those policies this morning, and the IT guy had done some editing and had some comments, and I thought it was interesting. One of his big concerns was like the blended devices, and if you're working from home, whose equipment are we using? And are you streaming Roku from your work machines? Are you is this become the main streaming device for your home? And that's sort of thing that we've got to keep these things separate, our work machines and our home machines, and we can't have, tons of strange personal stuff on your work machine, please. And I just thought that was, as I was reading the things that he was concerned about, I was like, this is it blended workforce, which is a workforce that works sort of some in the office, some from home, or maybe sometimes from the client's office, or some blend of that. It's also, there's a lot of blending of where are the files, and and whose network are they passing through. And other concerns we hear about is like, it's one thing to have high-speed internet coming into your house. It's another thing to have high-speed internet coming to the computer you use.
Yeah.
Because you're probably using wireless. And if your internal network is terrible or not well managed, not just not secure, but just not very well wired with the right equipment, then you can have terrible coverage in your house too. And so the things that they're talking about and being concerned about are very detailed and necessary.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of resources for people that, we just put out an article together with Joey Havens with Journal of Accountancy of questions you should ask.
Yep.
As well, which we can post the link to that. But in addition, I've been a part of a task force with the AICPA just on technology for COVID. And there's a whole link of resources between their podcasts with cybersecurity specialists and all sorts of topics, business continuity, and then just, making sure that you've got a good work-life, what I call harmony, but balance as well of how you monitor that. All of that is on a dedicated page for the AICPA as well. So those are some good resources if you're looking for resources on this to see what some of the best practices are right now, because it literally changes every day. And whatever, this is where agility comes back into place. And it's a good test of that muscle of agility right now through change. So if, anytime we've talked about change, sometimes, that's the hardest discussion to have of real change. People want to change, but then they talk about change and really take no action. And in this day and era, we don't have a choice. You have to change, right? So if it's not a comfortable place for you to be, this is really the time right now before the fall to do some really good planning, the best that you can do. And again, with different phased approaches and agility and so forth. But, while you have this moment, it's important to think through this because, whether it's this disaster or something that we have no idea that's coming, it's important that these conversations are even happening right now.
Yes. Well, most groups have at this point, they have some sort of committee, regardless of your size, you have some sort of committee that's working on change management, that's been guiding the crisis, if you will. And that committee, whoever it is, sometimes for a firm, it's the management committee or the executive committee. Sometimes it's a different committee than that. That committee would like to probably rest, and maybe you need to refresh it because it's been going, kind of hardcore since mid-March, maybe. But there isn't really any rest for that committee because we did emergency management for, let's say, 60 days or something, 45, 60 days. Now we've been in, like a new normal, but not a permanent normal. And now we've got to look to the next 6 months and say, what does that look like? And really make these plans you're talking about. And anytime you're creating change plans, what you're trying to do is to say, so what's the possible change? Who would be affected? Who needs to know what in what order? What are we going to ask of them? What's changing? What wouldn't change? If this happens, what would change? What wouldn't change? And, who do we need to tell in what order? And who would own each step of that process? Who gets to call that it's changed? Who gets to call that we're going to put those communication protocols in place? So you're right, this is the time to do that. And I know that a lot of firms right this minute, July 10th, some tax people probably aren't listening to us right now. And if they are, they're not going to be turning around, and working on this next Monday probably. But somewhere in this lull between July 15th and September 15th, and I know that there's the non-for-profit auditors and a bunch of other people that are like, what are you talking about? There is no rest for the weary, but somewhere in here, before we get into that deeper autumn season and the unpredictability that cold weather will bring to the part of the nation that gets cold weather, we need to do some more planning.
Well, and I think it's important to not always pull on your people, that this is where you do need to make an investment sometimes outside.
Sure, definitely.
To make sure that you are getting these things done and someone is thinking through it for you, because, I see this time and time again in firms and organizations. Things get piled on to somebody that already has an over full-time workload, and people aren't always good at saying no. Because, they worry about their job or how they might look if they say no and so forth. And, in all the talks that I've been having, people are so stressed out right now, overwhelmed, can't find that line between work and life at all, because they're not used to working remote and all the demands that are coming. And so as leaders, we have to help people prioritize and also decide what can we take off their plate and delegate somewhere else so that they can stay happy. And happiness is a really important thing that we have to focus on just as much as everything else, because in these times there's so many things drawing everyone down. And if we're not creating happiness somewhere in the workplace just for fun, or or telling people they're off, and really putting parameters and policies around that as well, we stand to have so many people burned out or quitting, or sticking with the job because of fear right now of not finding another job, but not necessarily showing up with the mindset and the positivity that you want with your clients and your coworkers.
Right. Well, and I think, like, I got up early this morning and met my friend Jill out at a trail, and we ran 5 miles. And I definitely think that we need to model the expected behaviors that'll help bring some of that happiness and some of that, what I don't even know if happiness is it. We've got to reduce anxiety levels and get people to process what's happening in our world and in the workplace in a healthy way. And so I agree with you as firm leaders, we have to model it. We have to, host it. We have to expect it. And, we're getting ready to put together some virtual exercise opportunities. We're not going to charge for those, but just to bring our communities together to exercise with us virtually, yoga, boot camp type work, that sort of stuff now and then, just to try to encourage our friends to get active. But you're right, some sort of way of processing this. And I do tell firms right now, we aren't going to have a lot of turnover. Our best and brightest are smart enough usually to, kind of hang in here through this tough time and wait to see what's going to happen in the marketplace. But after this, whatever that looks like, that could be middle of next year. We don't know when it is. Everybody's going to stop once it lifts and we're past this. The economy is kind of secure, feeling more secure, and COVID isn't, gripping us. When that happens, then there's going to be a big group of people that's going to say, I think I'm ready to move. And we don't want them to be our people. We want our people to be like, man, I just went through something with these people, but the way we handled it was incredible. Mm-hmm. And I feel more loyal and more engaged and more committed to them than I did before this thing. That's what we should be trying to create as leaders. And I'm not sure that we're thinking that way as leaders. I think a lot of times we're just thinking like, boy, we've got a lot of returns to process and a lot of audit reports to get out, and we need to sell more. And I don't like the way chargeable hours are. And the way we're messaging isn't like, hey, I really care about you and I want you to come along on this journey for the long haul.
Well, and if we want a different outcome, we have to start with the outcome and work backward. So if you're trying to elicit a feeling of more happiness in work, within meetings, whatever that is, first you have to identify what that feeling feels like, so that you can then back up and say, when do I feel that way? What things make me feel that way?
Yes.
And have everyone contribute into that. So then you can back up into the procedures and policies to allow people to elicit that feeling each day. There's just too much downtrodden heaviness, and whether it's at work or outside of work. So if we want to evolve the culture and change that, we have to come back to what is the feeling, not the thing, but the feeling, and then work into the things that create that feeling. And they could be little things. They don't have to be huge things, right? Like, it can just be, someone said thank you today. Well, that just changed how I felt, and so then I have to remember, okay, I'm going to put a reminder on my calendar that every day I thank somebody. So it doesn't have to be things of this magnitude, but right. We do have to kind of work into those little things or big things that we can challenge ourselves and our people, so that we are coming to work with a smile sometimes.
Yeah. For sure. I've said this many times in our leadership lunch chat, but we're doing at least one team motivation or optional team meditation a week. And we did ours yesterday, and I did mine from the back porch, and I showed them all my incredible flowers, because that's one of the blessings of this, is that I'm home to see all this bloom, and they're almost like bushes, some of them now. It's crazy what's happened. And I took them on a little garden tour, and then we did our meditation, and afterwards we all just were like, man, what a blessing. And that we weren't meditating as a group before COVID. COVID-19 gave us the idea. We were so freaked out about it that we thought we better start doing something that would bring some Zen to us.
Yeah.
And it's been incredible. I mean, it's a real blessing. But anyway, whatever it is that brings you those feelings, figure out what causes them, and then try to have more of it at work, for sure.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Okay, so we are out of time, but hopefully we gave you some food for thought to think about this week as you're putting your plans in place with agility and policies and procedures around blended work from home and in the office, and also just creating happiness. So
yes, and getting outside help, especially on the IT side. If you don't have the right resources that have that expertise, don't forget you're allowed to contract with people or do phone support or whatever. They'll help you. That's exactly. For sure.
Yes. All right. Well, awesome. See you again.
Yeah, thanks.